to order.
Sorry.
Yeah, and we'll call, at the moment, we'll call for a moment of silent prayer. Okay, thank you. Roll call finds all members of council in attendance. The mayor is here, and he will be out shortly to take charge of the meeting. Are there any disclosures of interest of members of council? Okay, then we'll move on to item E, which is the adoption of the council minutes from the December 17th meeting. And a motion here moved by Councillor Corbett, second by Councillor Shurton, that the minutes of the December 17, 2018 council meeting be adopted as circulated. All those in favor? Is carried unanimously. No presentations or items of recognition tonight, so we'll move on into item G, which is delegations in regards to recreational cannabis retail stores in Haldimand County. And just a reminder to anybody that wants to come up to the podium here, you have a maximum of 5 minutes per delegation. And I'll ask that you approach the podium, please state your name, and if you can sign in at the podium, I'd be appreciated.
Is there a sign-in tonight?
There is a sign-in sheet there. So I would open it up to the public to approach council to speak. Councillor Shurton, you have a question first?
Yes, I do. Through the Deputy Mayor, is, just for the members that are here, is staff going to maybe give a bit of a delegation or themselves, or are we just going to follow that up after they speak?
Yeah,
It might be.
Yeah, it was not staff's intent to give a presentation, or was it? Were you going to give a presentation?
Through the Deputy Mayor, we do have a presentation, an abbreviated version of what was done Tuesday CIC, which we could deliver this evening if that's council's desire.
Then I'll ask what's council's wish.
I think it's kind of important for the people
Short
here.
presentation by staff? Okay. And Mike will ask you to come forward then if that's the wish of council. And then we'll get into deputations.
I think it's important to have a small one.
Yeah, I guess the key is that
People are here at 6 o'clock. Give their wishes.
I think you know, the key is this should be a short presentation. The key to this is do your rules of engagement.
Yeah. Okay.
So good evening, council, members of public, and staff. This is a summarized and brief report regarding recreational cannabis retail stores in Haldimand County. So previously, staff had brought forward an information report which was considered by council at the December 11th council and committee meeting. Within that report is identified that there were several outstanding issues and unknown aspects related to cannabis retail stores. And it was also identified that all municipalities in Ontario must make a decision by January 22nd and provide this information to the Alcohol Gaming Commission of Ontario as to whether they will permit or prohibit cannabis retail stores within their community. So in terms of the outstanding information and the unknowns related to these stores, staff was uncertain initially about the location of these stores, the general appearance of these stores, and ultimately it's been concluded that these stores will likely be located wherever retail is permitted. So you'll largely see these stores within your community commercial, downtown community commercial core within your urban areas, very similar to an LCBO or a beer store. Staff was also uncertain in terms of if site plan control would apply, and that's mainly pertinent to vacant parcels of land rather than existing structures. This is a question that still remains unclear to staff and still is an outstanding issue. However, staff has provided or sought clarification regarding stores on production sites, and it's been identified that these stores and anyone with a federal license under the Cannabis Act, under the Federal Cannabis Act, were not permitted to apply for a license for a retail store. So that's been clarified by staff, and staff's presenting that to council today. There's also questions related to enforcement, and that's been clarified. The AGCO and the OPP will enforce all aspects of these retail stores. The OPP will deal with illegal storefronts. The public health unit and the county through bylaw enforcement will deal with where consumption can occur, so dealing with our Smoke-Free Ontario Act and also our municipal smoking bylaws. However, if Haldimand County opts in or opts out, that does not change the role within where cannabis can be consumed and the role of municipal staff in that sense. Staff also received clarification regarding funding. It's been clarified that whether Haldimand County opts in or opts out, there will be 2 payments that will be provided. If we opt out, we'll receive a little over than $51,000. That's based on a number of households within Haldimand County, and a second payment of about $5,000. If we opt in, this payment, the first payment will still be the 51 and change thousand, and then at a minimum, the second payment will be 51,000 plus. However, if Haldimand County opts out, we will not be eligible for any additional duty tax that could be provided, and only if Haldimand County opts in will this be provided. And essentially, the province has provided confirmation that they will split their portion of the federal tax funding, or federal tax with municipalities that opt in if this tax reaches $100 million within the first 2 years. There's also additional funding that's available for any unforeseen issues that the province has set aside, and that's approximately $10 million. Staff also have clarified where consumption can occur, and this is again dictated by the Smoke-Free Ontario Act and municipal smoking bylaws, and that's essentially wherever you can smoke a cigarette is where you can consume cannabis. So in terms of new information from the province, it's been identified that there is a cannabis supply issue that's affecting all of Canada. And in order to address this, the province has initiated a phasing of licenses within Ontario, and essentially have identified for this first year that a total of 25 licenses will be issued. Within the western region where Haldimand County is located, only 7 stores will have the opportunity to open within this 1-year time frame. However, through this lottery system that has been established by the province, there is a criteria or a rule requiring that these communities that that the communities that are allowed to have these facilities or these retail stores, if they have a population that's less than 50,000, these communities will not be eligible to have a cannabis retail store. So to date, if Haldimand County opts in, because of our population, we will not be eligible to have a store within this 1-year time frame. Staff have also engaged the public in various ways through a dedicated web page on our website, through public notices in the local newspapers, social media. Individuals have also provided comments to the clerk's department, with the majority of those providing comments to date recommending to opt out. And staff also prepared and presented to the public an online survey which ran from December 18th to January 8th with about 850 participants partaking in that survey. Just a quick overview of the result of that survey. A majority of those that participated, about 68%, identified that they wish to or support opt-in, largely because it's a legal product. They see it's an opportunity to curb the illegal market, to protect youth, economic benefits, and a variety of other reasons. Still a large majority of individuals, about 24% of those that participated, identified that they also wish to opt out. Largely, I could tell the theme from those surveyors that provided comments that recommended to opt out. Their concerns were largely with the disagreement with legalization as a whole, safety concerns, negative impacts to small town character, and a variety of other reasons. And then there was a percentage that suggested maybe for us to wait to see how it unfolds in other communities, and then those are uncertain. Staff also investigated other communities that had opted in and opted out to determine their rationale for their decisions. Those that had opted in essentially identified that they recommended or suggested to or went forward with opting in due to the product being legal, funding and economic opportunities, and the opportunity to remove an illegal option and consumption of cannabis. Those that suggested or chose to opt out saw that there was enforcement issues potentially. There was concerns with being dictated by the province. There's a lack of time identified to investigate and engage the public, and just an overall lack of control in terms of where these retail stores can be located. Based off of all of this research and the public engagement within Haldimand County, staff is recommending that council opts in. And for a variety of reasons, largely because the cannabis is a legal product in Canada. It'll be fully regulated, inspected, and enforced by the province. By opting out, we've forced residents to travel to other locations and or to gain their product through the illegal markets. Opting out also would, in staff's opinion, limit opportunity for those within the community to gain local, safe, direct access to a legal product. If we opt out, we will not be eligible for some additional funding, which is a consideration. By opting out, we'd also lose some potential economic opportunities, and that's not just the funding that could be obtained for the province. It could mean spin-off uses in tourism and other opportunities. And ultimately, based on the outcome of the survey completed, it is identified through that specific form of engagement that a majority of individuals that participated support opting in. That's it.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Corbett.
2 questions, please. First, have you any update in terms of the number of municipalities, number of the 444 that have opted in, opted out?
Through the mayor, as of January 14th, I know that 170 have opted in, and I believe approximately 56 had opted out.
Yeah, I believe there is a further update on that. Second question is with regard to the likelihood of us having a cannabis store, retail store in the county if we do opt in. What's the expectations if we do opt in when we will have a store?
Through the chair, I think what I can tell you right now is if we opt in, we're not going to see a store this year. The Ontario regulations under the Cannabis Licensing Act have to be amended, and that cap has to be removed, and or additional licenses need to be allowed to be issued by the province. So it's hard for me to say or give an estimated time frame. I just know for this year we will not see a store if we opt in.
Anything further? No? Okay, thank you. So we're going to allow those of you that are here to simply come up and speak. If you don't mind just signing in. One of the things that I'd ask is that there's roughly 5 minutes for those of you to be able to speak. If you're coming to say something that's already been said, then I would ask just for this sanctity of moving along, that you would leave that out and just simply say, yeah, I'm opting in, or I would choose to opt, or I support opting in, or support opting out for the same reasons that have been outlined, rather than we just continue to have the same conversation, whether it's a social issue or an economic issue. Just to move things along, it would certainly make it a lot easier for us to get through. We don't want to preclude anyone from being able to speak, so you do have certainly that freedom to do so. So we'll leave it kind of open to yourselves to sort of, whoever wants to start is welcome to come up, and then you can just determine whoever is going to go next from there, and once we see that everybody's had a chance, then we'll close it and move on in the meeting. So, no takers? Okay, yep.
There we go.
If you just don't mind signing into the,
sure.
the list there. And
Okay. Good afternoon. My name's Marta Vartanian, and we recently purchased 540 Hutchinson Road in Dunnville. And I think that opting in is a great opportunity for the community because everybody else is just going to come in and open cannabis stores regardless. So I think it's just a great opportunity for the community. And now that it's legal, everybody can come together as a community to have the stores just like the liquor stores. So I think it's a good idea in bringing money into the community and a safe community for cannabis. And a lot of people will bring their money to the area also. They'll invest in the farms, because the community has grown. Since we've come here in the last 2.5 years, we've seen the community grow, and it's fantastic.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mark. Yep. Yeah, oh, okay.
Great. So my name is Mary Beth Williamson. I'm the head of marketing for Thrive, which is a local business in the cannabis business. My background is I've worked for a lot of consumer goods companies in the past. I've worked for Procter & Gamble on brands like Tide, Pantene, Olay, and I've worked as the head of marketing for Jameson Vitamins. And I'm in this business right now because there are an awful lot of similarities. I did a lot of research before I got involved in the cannabis business and learned that there are many opportunities to improve consumers' lives with the product. And I'm definitely in the opt-in group, primarily for the 3 reasons that the planning staff have articulated quite clearly. I don't know how many of you are aware, but 24% of Canadians have consumed cannabis in the past year. They've consumed it for recreational reasons, but actually more for therapeutic reasons, such as improving sleep, reducing stress, relieving chronic pain, and they've used it for medical reasons. It's approved by Health Canada and certain insurance companies like Sun Life for epilepsy, for MS spasticity, for Crohn's disease. So there are a lot of really, really positive benefits for it. So consumers have for centuries been consuming cannabis. 24%, so kind of look around the room, 1 in 4 have likely consumed cannabis in the past year, and the local residents need a place to be able to buy it. Without local retail, the options are going to be the OCS. I don't know if any of you have shopped on the OCS. It's efficient now in that you get product pretty quickly, but it's not helpful. You don't get the information that you need from a one-to-one relationship with a retail person. So what's going to happen if you don't have a local retail opportunity is what has been happening for the past few decades. Consumers will be buying on the illicit market, which continues to propagate criminal activity, and it continues to encourage consumers to be buying from non-regulated sources. And those of us who are in the legal business spend a lot of time, effort, and money making sure we have high-quality product that is completely free of contaminants and are exactly what we say on the label it's going to be for consumers. So it's important, I think, for consumers to get what they want to get in the product and to be able to have somebody help them navigate their way through the product. So I certainly very strongly would opt in this market.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You can adjust Tyson, maybe help her with the podium just.
Sure.
You saying I'm short?
No. Just, there are those that are watching maybe on and so they, just so that they can hear you.
I spoke last week. Some of you heard me. I truly wish John Eidelman was here tonight. He had a wonderful speech last week at the arena. You were there.
Yeah.
You were there. And it just broke my heart what opiates done to his family. And it was honest. And I'm in the minority, I guess, tonight. I'm a grandma. I got 13 grandchildren. And I know some of them are smoking, so it isn't going to matter whether it's legal or not. It's there. And it'll be anywhere in Haldeman as it has been for years. And I think it's disgusting that we have to earn money off of, if one kid dies, I didn't opt in for it. It'll be you people. And it breaks my heart. And it isn't an end-all to be-all. It's just another step ahead of marijuana. It'll be the bad stuff, and it goes on, just like John said last week. So really think about opting in or out, because those surveys mean nothing. I don't have a computer. I can't do anything. I have to call you or call John. There's a lot of old people like me that don't have computers, that can't do these online surveys. And I'd be really skeptical who made these surveys up. They were likely young kids or users. Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, everybody. Sorry. My name is Bubba Nicholson. I also work with the Thrive Group. Previous to that, I was the president of a group of medicinal cannabis clinics called Hello Cannabis, based out of the Dundas area. It is a very touching story, and that she had just told, and I'm very aware of the tolls that opioids can have on our lives. I would like to say that one of the concerns that I know that we had here, I believe last July, was a health notice that had gone out that there were concerns that cannabis had been sprinkled with fentanyl. I remember seeing that come out in the news. And that was a giant concern. And that would have been cannabis that was bought on the black market. It was not through legal channels. By regulating and legalizing cannabis and ensuring that that cannabis is being tested and sold through the proper channels at retail, we're ensuring that people that are out there looking for drugs are not being diverted to the black market, but they're coming in to getting cannabis that we have tests for and that we know the exact percentages. For me, with opioids, I hadn't used cannabis since I think I was a teenager. And last year, I was on a cane for 6 months. I was prescribed 8 hydromorphone pills a day from my doctor. I was prescribed gabapentin as well, which is a nerve drug, and I was on 1,200 milligrams of a drug called naproxen, which I'm sure many of us are familiar with as an anti-inflammatory. Those drugs prescribed by my doctor changed my life. I became a bit of a shell of a human being at home. My relationship started to fall apart. I was working for the cannabis clinic at the time, and I decided to start using cannabis to get myself off of these drugs. I used a CBD oil, which is non-psychotropic, to be able to get myself off 1,200 milligrams of naproxen a day. At that point, the 8 to 10 hydromorphone that I was prescribed, instead of smoking cannabis, I started vaporizing cannabis, high CBD cannabis at a lower temperature. That allowed me to get off about 6 of the breakthrough hydromorphones I was taking per day. I still had to take those opioids or I wouldn't have been able to walk or move. But what I was allowed to do is use it as a conjunctive therapy to my opioid therapy. This got me off of those opioids, and as soon as the doctors told me that I could get off of them and my surgeries were done, I quit cold turkey from the opioids, and I used cannabis oils to get me through the next 4 nights. They were the most horrible 4 nights of my life. I never knew what chronic pain was until I'd moved back to my parents' house, living in their basement, high on opioids, and wondering whether I wanted to wake up the next day. And we have a huge opioid problem in this area, in Hamilton and all around. Hamilton, I believe, is the #2 prescribing city of opioids in Canada. And I think that there's a huge opportunity for us to be able to address these problems instead of shoveling them underneath our houses. I think that we need to get out there and find places for people to have safe access to cannabis so that they can work as either a frontline therapy, because we don't need those people going out to the street and purchasing off illegal markets when we don't know what other people have done to it. The way that Ontario cannabis is grown, and that's grown through these licensed producers, there's no pesticides, nothing like that going into it. You know the product, the consistency, there's a government standard. When buying on the black market, And if we're forcing people to go to the black market in our community to go and purchase that cannabis, then we're just sending them off who knows where. I would definitely vote to opt in. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Anybody? Yeah, okay.
I'll sign in at the end. My name is Ann Baldwin, and I also spoke at the Cayuga community meeting last week. What I find is unfortunate, and I'm not sure, Mr. Mayor, you can correct me on this, but councillors will have received information, whether it's phone calls or emails or personal face-to-face contact, about constituents' opinions. So that won't be heard here tonight. Is that correct?
That won't be heard?
That's correct.
No, I don't believe it's all of the correspondence. I mean, and I'm certain there's probably many conversations that councils have had that would.
Yes. Thank you. I'm just saying that more for the gallery because it may seem from the gallery tonight that there is an opt-in as opposed to an opt-out view. And each of the councillors and Mr. Mayor and others, the clerk, may have heard different views from different constituents. So I think that's important to consider, that what you hear tonight is a sampling.
Sure.
I would also like to go to the planning staff's conclusion here and put out my perspective that option, or numbers 2 and 3 on that slide are identical. They both refer to residents having to travel to get a legal product, and that is not correct. You can order, it's been referenced already, that you can order online. And I have friends who use the online service and they're very pleased with it. They had to do a little more research to find out exactly what they needed and what they wanted and what worked best for them, but they're using the online service and they tell me that they will continue to do that. So it's not true that people would have to travel. They wouldn't, as far as the post office. It's as simple as that. I am in favor of opting out. I'm not convinced that the province has provided clear direction and commitment to support municipalities in this initiative. I am for legalization. I fully support that. I think it's important and the decision has been made, but I do not believe that Haldimand County needs to opt in to support that. I believe that opting in, we're going to have a lot of social impacts. There will be access to appropriate, whether it's medical, some of the people who are speaking tonight, we're talking about medical cannabis, which is actually prescribed, or recreational. There will be access to it. It just doesn't need to be in Haldimand County. And I think with the lack of enforcement, which I'm convinced will not be proper enforcement. We struggle right now with enforcement of speeding and bylaws and simple things in life. How are we going to expect the AGCO to have more enforcement than they currently have? I don't see the current provincial government doing that. So my vote is opt out, allow it in other municipalities. People travel on a regular basis, they can pick it up there, or they can use the online service. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Anyone else? Just to answer your question too, Ann, about the correspondence, I just asked the CEO, one of the challenges, of course, that we have with the online correspondence and some of the emails is that it's without their permission of posting that public, it is a challenge for us from the Privacy Act. So that's where it becomes an issue. But it is a fair comment to be said that there's this, and clearly I think it's a polarizing issue and one that you know, I think all of council has heard for the past several months, you know, just as many people that feel the same as yourself as others that feel for other reasons. Okay, sorry.
Through the chair, my name is John Walker. I'm probably like maybe a majority of people in Haldeman in that I'm neutral on the opt-in, opt-out. Just have a quick question for council. Because of the importance of this vote, will this be a recorded vote?
John, I guess we'll get to that answer. I don't know what council, where we would be at that, but we'll certainly make it very clear as to where everybody's position is. Anyone else? No?
Hi there. I'll sign in when I'm done as well.
I can just get you close, yeah, for those
Sorry.
that are watching on TV, thanks.
Awesome. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so my name is Tiffany. I live in Dunnville. I'm the owner of a small business. I think I'm a kind of respected member of the community. I've been nominated and won Best Pet Groomer in Haldeman County for the last 4 years. So I am interested in investing in this kind of a business should it ever come to Haldeman County. I think it's a great idea for employment, for commerce, for generating taxes. And I actually smoke marijuana myself. So I just want to respond to the last comment who was made by the very nice lady. I drive to Hamilton at least once a week to pick up from an illegal dispensary, and I would very much like to not have to do that anymore. That's it. Thanks.
Just signing in. Jeff Hoover, 119 Selkirk Street, Caledonia. Been a resident of Haldeman County for 35 years. You know, I haven't touched cannabis my entire life until maybe about 1.5 years ago. I got in a bad car accident, actually 4 car accidents over 3 years, but the last one was fairly bad. I was on like naproxen, regular, it was rotting my guts out, getting ulcers. Started on CBD oil, like cannabis oil. My stomach started to feel better.
Sorry, Jeff, just sorry to interrupt, but just for those, if you can, maybe you can elevate that or change.
Sure,
yeah,
sorry.
just people, they need to be able to hear.
Perfect, thanks. Back, neck pain, almost incapacitated at work, sitting in an office chair. I started taking cannabis oil for every night before bed. My muscles started to relax. My neck started to get loose, started to feel better. My wife has ulcerative colitis. She's like, all of a sudden she's like, well, I should try that stuff too. I'm on all these drugs. They're horrible for me. So she starts trying it, same thing. Her stomach's, she's off most of her drugs. She's only on 1 drug. And I know I'm telling a story about people using cannabis because I want you to understand that cannabis isn't just about smoking cannabis. Like everybody has this preconceived notion about people getting high, people smoking cannabis, but what we want to do is we want to give access to these people that have these ailments, cannabis. We want to give them access to the oils, to the capsules, to different form factors, not just smoking cannabis. It's, if you look at the market, I think their studies suggest that by Deloitte, 80% of the market will be smoke-free in the next 24 months. So we're talking oils, tinctures, capsules, things like that. The other thing I'm concerned about, if we don't bring these stores into the community, that people in the lower social economic bracket won't have access to cannabis. You need a credit card to purchase online. So a lot of people that don't qualify for a credit card, they need to go in, cash their checks, use cash, and purchase cannabis for different health reasons. I also concerned about people have this preconceived notion again about the policing. Well, you're going to put more pressure on the black market by bringing retail into your community, so into our community actually. So that's one thing that's it's a big kind of, people get you know, concerned about, oh, we're gonna have to bring more police in, but actually what you're doing is you have you have a controlled legal substance now that people can purchase here instead of purchasing it from a guy on the corner that might upsell them on a different product that they have. People see it as kind of like a gateway drug. Like that's a big concern. Like I have 3 children coming up in Haldimand County in Caledonia, and these are things that, you know, I don't want my children to be enticed by. I hope in 10 years from now that there's, you know, you see it like the LCBO and the black market's totally gone, and I think that's what this is all about. So I definitely would opt in.
Anyone else? No? Okay. We'll close it. Questions, council? Questions to staff? Comments? Councilor Sheridan?
On one of the slides, through the mayor, it was mentioned about the 50,000 population about being, so for Haldimand County, are we considered one entity as far as if we do opt in, so there'll only be one in Haldimand County, or will each town potentially be able to have retail if we opt in? Like, is the 50,000 only a benchmark for the initial, I guess, lottery?
Through the mayor to Councillor Shirton. So phase 1, for which the lottery has just recently happened, is capping the total number of stores across the province at 25. The province has made it clear through amendments to the legislation that the municipality has to have a population of minimum 50,000 to be eligible, and to have opted in, of course, to be eligible to host one of those stores. Haldimand County is looked at as a single-tier municipality, so it's our entire population that is factored into that phase 1 threshold, if you will. So being a municipality with a population of, you know, roughly between 46,000, 47,000, again, we're under the 50,000. County is not eligible, should it opt in, for a store in phase 1. And that phase 1, again, is expected to last for the duration of 2019. The province has not showed its cards, so to speak, in terms of what will happen after phase 1, when they may amend the legislation, what that amendment or those amendments may look like. So right now it's unclear what phase 2 and future phases will be. That said, the original intent of the legislation is quite clear, that there will not be a cap. Other than this 25 stores in phase 1, there will not be a cap in terms of the number of stores that can be in a given municipality. The province has been very clear that it will allow the market to dictate how many stores end up, you know, in a given center. So the short answer is to that question, you know, what everything will look like after phase 1 is not entirely clear, but given what the province has indicated, and which we do have clarity on, is that their intent is not in the future to impose any type of cap on number of stores that could be in a municipality.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Mike, for that information.
Any other questions to staff? Seeing none, then I'll... Yeah, Councilor Lawrence.
Through the mayor. First, I'd like to thank all of you who have come out today in this bitter cold tonight. Definitely speaks volumes as to how we all feel with regard to the issue of opting in at this time for our municipality. I'd also like to thank staff. I've been in contact with the province continuously over the last number of months and trying to get clarification and formulating a recommendation for whether to opt in at this point in time. Just speaks volumes about your dedication and I think your patience as well, more than anything. As we all know, when this became legal, when the Trudeau government decided to make this legal, this changed the Canadian socioeconomic landscape. And now we're here trying to figure out what's the best way with regard to retail sale of cannabis. So tonight we're going to decide at this time whether to opt in with the sale of cannabis. Whether at this moment to stay on the sidelines and observe other municipalities that have chosen to opt in, or deal with the issues that come with that choice. This is an issue that is polarizing, to say the least, as there are many pros and cons, and I totally see the pros and cons of both sides of the argument, no matter which side of the rolling paper you may stand. What is circumventing at the time, I feel, for all the arguments, in talking to different people within our community, and whether it's just residents on the street or retail partners in our community, is the changing policy that the province seems to be changing time and time again. We've heard that from staff and different people. When the Ford government, when they campaigned, it was going to be, there would be no cannabis retail outlet within 450 meters of a school. Now that's 150 meters. There was going to be unlimited sources of retail outlets. Now there's 25 it's capped at the moment. The lack of control of where exactly the retail outlet is going to be. Not that it's not going to be in a commercial zone, but where is it going to be and what's it going to be situated beside? Can you only imagine that if a retail outlet, the province decides it's going to go right beside a retail outlet for children's clothing? Possibility. Probably not, but you never know. But one part that I also strongly disagree with the argument to opt in is that retail outlets will put a dent in the black market. That is absolutely ludicrous, because as we know, the sale of tobacco is everywhere. You can purchase tobacco everywhere, and the black market for the sale of tobacco is thriving as much as ever. So that'll be the same as cannabis, as I see. So again, the problem here is, in hearing it through many people, even on the pro side of opting in, is that we don't have a lot of clarity and direction from the province and where it may change, because this government has shown it may change their mind quickly and go to a different direction. So I'm going to be clear and just say I believe that we should not opt in at this point in time.
Anything else? I want to read this motion first, I guess, get on the floor. It's moved by Councillor Patterson. Second, Councillor Corbett. Wow, you guys have changed all your signatures. One, that report PDD 02-2019 recreational cannabis retail stores in Haldeman County be received. Two, that Haldeman County elects to opt in to permit cannabis retail stores being located in the municipality. Three, and that staff be directed to bring forward a report on the desirability and implications of prohibiting smoking on public property. Councillor Corbett.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council, and I too thank the people who come out this evening, who've taken of their time rather than just get on a computer. I have the numbers here, and I would say that it was particularly even, because I know how some of the people feel on here, irregardless of how they spoke. One of the bits of information, and I've got quite a bit from all the information that's been put out in the paper. Personally, I take opiates. I take narcotics for osteoarthritis. I do not consider myself a druggie. I take Tylenol 3. I drink on occasion, and I have a drinking buddy here tonight, but I do not consider myself an alcoholic. Neither do neither am I a proponent of cannabis nor a user, but I do not consider people who indulge to be potheads, which they seem to be triggered to be. In reviewing the many responses I received, they speak of the question of legalization of cannabis. That decision has already been made. the federal government, as part of their elected platform mandate, legalized cannabis. The government, federal, controls growing, and the province controls distribution. As a municipality, we do exercise very little in either of those things. We do, however, have an opportunity to opt in or opt out for having retail cannabis stores in our county. It behooves us as councillors then to make a responsible decision which we feel is in the best interest of our community. There are many articles, as I've pointed out, and a whole slew of information, pros and cons, and opting in or out. Let's consider some of the facts. Just who are the users? Surprisingly, the modern day consumer isn't what we think it is. They are normal, everyday people who are family-oriented and engaged in our local community. Excuse me. They are mothers, fathers, professionals, blue and white collars, diverse in gender, ethnicity, and age. Research studies show that the median age today of the consumer is 37 years of age. 4 in 10 have children in their home. Women users have steadily increased from 25 to above 35%. And going on the information that was provided, indication was 24, I got 25%. We're still talking 1 in 4 people utilize it. Contrary to the stereotype, modern consumers are employed, 91%, twice as likely to have a post-secondary education, and 49% have a household income over $75,000. A growing number of cannabis users are boomers and seniors such as I haven't started yet. The market, the total cannabis market in Canada is expected to generate $7.2 billion in sales in 2019, with overall consumption from legal channels expected to jump 35%. The projected legal market in Ontario ranges from $455 million to $1.1 billion, with 65% of the Canada's products to be purchased through legal channels. Cannabis entrepreneurs are going to thrive, and through taxation, provincial coffers are likely to benefit extensively from this new industry. As you no doubt are aware, the legality of the line cannot keep up to consumer orders right now. The cannabis store cannot keep up. One stunning fact to consider about the money side of the cannabis is a comparison in greenhouses. 1 square meter of tomatoes would yield sales of $200 per square meter per year, while 1 square meter of cannabis would produce gross sales of from $8,000 to $30,000 a year. It's no wonder that they're switching over from vegetables into cannabis. It's well worth their efforts. And they must have a market out there for that. Public input and surveys are currently surveyed, received 850 responses to the opt-in out survey, and it's 5 times as many as what we received for the Central Administration survey, which seen us put into our expenditures $20 million. 68% favored opting in. Burlington conducted a number of surveys with 65.4% of the 1,926 responded in favor of cannabis. And I must say, if you take a look at ours at 850 respondents, and you take a look at Burlington, which is 3 or 4 times as big as us, then the results are similar across that. And we are aware that Hamilton, who decided to opt in, had similar results. The majority of Ontario opted in, and the latest statistics I have for municipalities would indicate that only 62 of the 444 municipalities opted out. Our neighbor to the west of us, Norfolk, unanimously opted in. Surprisingly, the John Howard Society recommends opting in. Reviewing the feedback I received from Facebook, whether you seem to think that's credible or not, the respondents favored to opt in. Financial implications, we know we will receive the $52,000 regardless of our decision of opting in and out. If we opt in, we will receive an additional amount and be eligible for an additional shared funding if the federal government excise duty exceeds $100 million. There are also further funding with a $10 million fee out there for unforeseen circumstances. Those municipalities who opt in will get preference for this funding. There is also the economic incentive for our county with retail growth and employment. We share the share of $40 million implementation fund set up to help municipalities who accept the stores deal with potential law enforcement, education, and public health costs. And I must make you aware that whether or not we opt in or opt out, we will still have those challenges of law enforcement, education, and public health. With regard to enforcement, smoking and vaping enforcement is a concern. We have but one person across Haldeman Norfolk Health Unit to enforce the act. Whether or not we opt in or out, the enforcement need is there. Additional opt-in funding would be available for this thing. License enforcement will come from Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario, and they have a whole slew of things that you have to meet to qualify to get in. Retail store establishment, the county would be notified of any license application. There would be that 15-day response period, and we had that information from staff at the last meeting. We had an opportunity to raise our concerns, whether they'll be listened to or not. It's just like applying for a liquor license. Comment from the medical officer of health. While stores in Haldeman will increase access, the overall availability of cannabis means that the operation or prohibition of retail stores in Haldeman County will have a small net effect related to the ability of consumers to obtain cannabis. And if I may, this goes to the fact that whether or not we have a legal cannabis store, it's going to be here. We will not have that extra funding for looking after those items that I spoke to you about. I've also spoken to my local pharmacist who supports the benefits of opting in for our community, and he would be pleased to speak with anyone who has questions on the subject. Does the upside of cannabis retail stores outweigh the downside? Let's take a review on. It is a new source of revenue that we can share, in which we will include funding for enforcement and usage education. It will help fund municipal transfers, and we're always after the federal and provincial government to pass on some funding to us. This is an opportunity. There will be a safe and secure supply within the health and security risks that go along with the clandestine black market sales. Every cannabis dollar that flows through the legal channel is one that won't flow through the black market. Every regulated sale will replace an unregulated sale with all the risk it carries. There is some indication that the available use of quality cannabis will contribute to the use or decrease in opioid use. Now that's according to a study done in Oregon, and talking to our local people, they don't really go along with it, but it's out there. And you must be aware, in Haldimand, Norfolk, we do have an opioid crisis. Based on my review, I believe opting in would be a prudent, responsible decision. I will be voting in favor of opting in, and I'd ask for a recorded vote.
Councillor Patterson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not as well prepared as my colleagues. I don't have a written statement, but I was just sitting here and some thoughts came to me. And the one is, I think Mrs. Baldwin addressed it when she was having remarks as far as have we taken into consideration other people's concerns? Have we spoken to other folks outside of these 850 poll or the open houses, that type of thing? And I can say, yes, personally I have. I feel strongly that as a new councillor for Ward 1, my personal feelings for in or out have got nothing to do with the situation. I was elected to represent the residents of Ward 1. So in doing my due diligence, I had an open house. I've talked to folks, whether it's been in the local restaurants, the barber shop, the pub, wherever I could basically have a one-on-one and hear folks' actual thoughts and opinions. I had a phone call, actually multiple phone calls this weekend from 3 people I really, really respect in the town of Jarvis. They urged me to opt out. 2 of the people in particular were really, really staunch supporters of me at the last election. I guess that could change in the next 4 years. But I guess all I'm trying to say is I'm not, and I said this at the open house when I was asked about what my personal thoughts are, and I said that's not relevant at this point in time. I do not want to try to influence somebody on their decision. So I have my own opinions. I guess you'll find that out when I vote. But I think our role as councillors is to represent the people that supposedly hired us and voted for us.
Anyone else? No?
Well, Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Delmine?
just a few short comments if I can, because most of it's been said, and I agree a lot with what Councillor Corbett has said here tonight. But you know, going back on what Councillor Patterson just said, you know, we're here to represent the public, but it's also our duty and our responsibility to talk to the experts in the medical field. And I really put a lot of weight on some of the discussion we had with our medical officer of health here at last Thursday's Health and Social Services meeting. And I put a lot of weight on the discussions that I've had in the community with our public health people, those that are on the street on a day-to-day basis, the OPP, who have the street gang that deal with you know, the latest crisis of the day, whatever it may be from a drug standpoint. And you know, as Councillor Corbett said, you know, our medical officer of health indicated on Thursday that, you know, there is no clear evidence across the province that cannabis is acting as a gateway drug to other drugs. I've heard our staff say that at the health unit. I attended a conference in Toronto last year that was, or in a room that was full of medical officers of health from all over Ontario. The reality is that the consensus was among that group that there is no clear indication that it's a gateway to other drugs. Our medical officer of health went on to say last Thursday that cannabis isn't the issue on the street that they're dealing with as health professionals or in conjunction with their counterparts on the OPP. It's opioids. It's fentanyl. It's all those other hard drugs. That's what the OPP told us here last year in their presentation to council from the street gang unit. That's what the medical officers of health are telling me. That's what our people in our public health department are telling me. And it's also what those, the committee that was formed with our health unit staff and in conjunction with members of the community are telling me, that it's fentanyl. It's the hard drugs. That's the issue of the day. That's the issue that our medical officer of health made reference to. You know, he did go on to say that, you know, that any type of smoking or vaping isn't good. for anybody at any time of day. He also talked about the fact that the byproducts such as oil are a great thing to have. It can act and do its municipal therapy for those that need it in the community. You know, he talked about the need of having guidance there, though, from GPs before it's used, but obviously it's happening out there today. But my biggest fear, after what I've heard from that group that I speak to on a regular basis, is deliberate cross-contamination in the underground market, accidental cross-contamination for those that are trying to sell it. And that's my biggest fear when you tie that back to what's happening on the street and the huge, enormous issue that we're dealing with hard drugs, the opioids, and all those other drugs. So, Mr. Mayor, I'm in favor of opting in for that reason alone.
Okay. Just before we call the vote, I just want to summarize a couple of comments. I think one of the hardest things to strip out of this is the emotion that's attached to the subject. And while Councillor Patterson makes the comment that we're here to represent the interests of the public, and Councillor Delamani, you make the good comment that we're also here to gather as much information as we can. And what I can tell you is, based on what you've heard here and what I've heard, is you've heard a number of councillors certainly take the time the past few months to educate themselves and truly get an understanding of, you know, what this industry is and the difference between a CBD and a THC, which if you'd asked me that 6 months ago, I couldn't define either of those. And I think many of us now truly have a better appreciation of what this cannabis looks like. It's not just, as was stated earlier, it's not just rolling a joint and smoking it for the sake of smoking it. There's a number of applications and opportunities that exist outside of just you know, the growth of marijuana. And so what I see as a challenge for Haldimand County that is so far beyond the retail for us to grapple with in the near future is the merging of our smoking bylaw that currently allows smoking on our public properties and marrying that with those that will choose to recreationally smoke marijuana. And that's a challenge that this council, I think, is going to face and see as staff brings that information forward and how we will resolve that. The other issue that I see as well is from the growing side of things is how can we protect our landowners and those that have invested their savings in property and ensuring that we're marrying those owners with growers that are growing ethically and responsibly and being fair to their neighbors and mostly protecting ourselves from those that aren't growing under the auspices of a licensed producer but growing because they've been able to gather a bunch of medical permissions to allow them to grow as a co-op, where it becomes unregulated, unsupervised, and causes a lot more of that criminal issue that I think majority of people are concerned of. And so those are two items I see as much more important to the members of Haldimand County, the communities of Haldimand County. From the retail perspective, I think that we have the benefit of sitting in the cheap seats and watching this province work with the first 25 stores and be able to see what's going to happen. And then we've heard already that this has been a fluid issue and it's moved and changed tremendously. It's probably going to change another dozen times before the end result is finally there. And we get to enjoy, I guess, watching that by virtue of not being able to participate should we opt in. And so that, along with two items that really, I think, had an influence on me, was the members of our social services staff in Norfolk when I'd asked them their position, because I can't, as a member of the community, I can only take the information that people have brought forth, such as how it's affected them personally or how it's affected their family or friends. I can't share in that experience. I don't have that experience to draw on, and I don't have the experience to be able to say that cannabis is good, bad, or ugly, because I have not taken it or used any of the oils. But when I've talked to those professionals that are in the industry or in the social services realm, who provide a lot of that frontline support work in our communities, they're the ones that saying to me from their experience that they support the opting in of retail, and they support the legalization of cannabis, and they support the idea of oils and extracts used in a responsible and medical way to provide a number of answers to solutions that were in the past used by serious drugs. And so from that, I spoke as well to the mayor of Owen Sound, which you might find odd, why Owen Sound, but Owen Sound was a community that chose to not accept alcohol, and they were a dry community till 1972. I didn't know that, but I had read a report, and so I chose to call the mayor, and I wanted to get his insight, and they chose not to participate with the LCBOs till 1972, and the comments that he made was, as a result of that decision that previous councils made many, many years ago when, of course, Prohibition came out, his view and the majority of the people and the public's view was that it was an abysmal failure for them, and the result was certainly a lot more dependency on alcohol and a market that grew inside of the areas of Owen Sound that was illegal, was bootlegging, and a number of issues that really were unregulated and uncontrolled. And so listening to him speak and his passion and his experience, being able to live through that and explain how they felt that was a bad decision made, I feel the reason that we should be opting in is because we get to have that view from 30,000 feet for the next year to be able to see how this is going to unfold. And I'm convinced that if the province is going to change their mind in the next year, as they have the last 6 months, that we'll have a discussion on opting in and out or participating in and out over the next number of months, because there's going to be significant changes that will occur. And so eliminating ourselves today for the same reasons that my friend Councillor Lawrence is saying he's concerned that there's not enough information, I would be concerned to say the same, that opting out would result in us closing a door that might not be the door that is the real concern for us, but a door that could possibly be a solution. So I'll pass it to the clerk, who's going to call for a recorded vote, and she'll explain the process.
So Councillor Corbett has requested a recorded vote. When I call your name, please indicate yes or no in support of the motion. Councillor Patterson.
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf.
No.
Councillor Lawrence.
No.
Councillor Delamonte.
Yes.
Councillor Shurton.
Yes.
Councillor Corbett.
Yes.
And Mayor Hewitt.
Yes.
And that carries 5-2.
Thank you. And I failed to mention, and I do want to thank, as everyone said, for those of you to take the time to come out here in this cold, crappy Monday. Actually, the news said this was the worst Monday of the year. It's called Blue Monday, I guess, and it's the worst Monday of the year. So for those of you to take the time, I do truly appreciate it and thank you. And I know Council thanks you for being here. So I got a motion here by Councillor Corbett, seconded by Councillor Metcalf, that the minutes of the January 8th, 19 Committee of the Whole meeting be adopted as circulated. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. I'll just, we'll just give it a couple minutes here just to allow the gallery to clear for the noise. Okay, so I've got a, it's moved by Councillor Metcalf, seconded by Councillor Corbett, that the minutes of the January 15th, 19 Council and Committee meeting be adopted with the following recommendations withdrawn to be voted on separately. Recommendation number 5, redraft motion, the installation of pedestrian crossover on King Street East, Hagersville. Recommendation number 15, LSS M0419, additional information related to report LSS 0319 and confidential memorandum LSS M01 2019. All those in favor?
Question.
Oh, question on that? Sorry, Councillor Corbett.
Yes, just to make sure, and I've spoke to the clerk earlier, that we do have meetings coming up with the NPCA and GRCA later this week. If they can contact the respective authorities, conservation authorities, and make them aware of the change, please.
Okay. So again, I'll just call that, all those in favor? That's carried unanimously.
That's pulled recommendation 5.
So this is moved by Councillor Delamonte, seconded by Councillor Scherten. That recommendation number 5, draft motion, the installation of pedestrian crossover on King Street East, Hagersville, be deleted and replaced with the following. That staff be directed to report back to council prior to the development of the 2020 tax capital budget on the implementation of a countywide pedestrian crossover program, including location, criteria, recommended system type, costing, and proposed installation locations developed in consultation with local councilors, and that the installation of a pedestrian crossover on Main Street East at the Dunnville Farmers Market, included in the draft 19 tax capital budget, be considered a pilot project to demonstrate the feasibility of the program, including confirmation, system type, and costing. So I guess my question is that aren't we getting a report back first before, or this sounds like we're putting it in the budget, but we don't know what we're actually getting?
20 budget.
Oh, 20, I'm sorry, okay. Councillor Scherten?
Well, that,
Is that what you were thinking?
that was my question. I didn't know why it was 220, but maybe, I guess we got a test
Getting ahead of
pilot,
ourselves.
219, yeah.
Okay, all those in favor? That's carried unanimously. So I need a mover and a seconder that recommendation number 5 of the council and committee minutes dated January 15th, 19 be adopted as amended. Moved. Councillor Corbett, seconded Councillor Delamonte. All in favor? That's carried unanimously. Okay, and this is item number 15, moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Delamonte, that recommendation number 15 of the council and committee minutes dated January 15th, 19 be adopted. So this is pulling it?
It was.
No, we pulled it.
Yeah. Oh, so that's to adopt it if it's to be adopted unless there's a change that needs to be made, but.
Okay, Councillor Patterson, did you want to speak to this?
Yes, if you don't mind, thank you. Through the chair, I'd like to offer up, I guess, a little alternative to the recommendation. I have some issues still with the lot, the main one being the gas monitoring station that we're not sure if it's on the property or the property line. So I would like, if possible, to defer it back to staff to review it and bring it back at a later date, if it's agreeable around the table.
Through the mayor to John Manager Kathy, are you aware of the gas monitoring or?
No, I'm not aware of any of the details related to that or whether it's on the property or not. Staff would need to investigate that further.
First you've heard?
No, I'm not saying that the property coordinator is not aware of it. She may be very well aware of it. I'm personally not aware of it.
So just the recommendation, by virtue of us not proceeding, I guess would allow staff to ultimately get more information. Is that not, would that, I mean, we would get there anyways with this recommendation still? Because we're not committing one way or the other. We're simply saying no to this.
Saying no to this offer and
Yeah.
take it back to staff.
We can have another motion come back. Councilor Sheridan?
Well, talking to Councillor Patterson, I think, and one of my concerns too, or issues is, if this is a viable lot, and we heard the other day that possibly in 1 or 2 years, it could be a much more viable building lot. So if that's the case, I would say agree with what we did on Tuesday. But my understanding is if there is some of these concerns on this lot, and it isn't that viable a lot, let's sell it, move on, and take our dollars. So I think it's important to get more clarification on that lot and what the opportunities it presents.
So,
There's through you, Mr. Mayor, there's two ways we could do it. We could pass what you passed on Monday, which puts it back to staff. If it is a viable lot, to put it out to market, if it is a viable lot. Obviously, the resident next door thinks it's a viable lot because they don't want it merged to their property. And so, to me, if you don't want it merged to your property, you're basically concluding it's a proper lot. And so, I think had it been the original offer to buy it, have it merged and put it there, we were probably there. The fact that pay the $7,000, pay a dollar value and have it separate, that's what led me down to believe that, and then when looking at it, that it's a proper lot. So if it is, either you can defer it now and put in abeyance and come back with a report, or you give it direction to staff that we move forward. If it is proper lot, we look at how we can sell it, knowing what the potential is. I just don't want to sell, I don't want to sell a lot for a small value on somebody who believes they're going to bonus on having a separate lot. Having it merged because it was a problem, and I understand that they're taking care of it, I totally get, and like to make it, that was sort of the original understanding, right?
Stu? Councilor Patterson?
I guess I was trying to stick handle around this politically, and that might not be the right thing. So I'm going to go back to my original intention, and I'm going to just give you a bit of background. So at last week's council and committee meeting, staff had made the recommendation. I'm not going to get into specifics of the closed session, but staff had made the recommendation of option number 2. And I think council would have supported that. And that the day in question, new information came in that changed the conditions of that purchase. I have not spoken to Mr. Reynolds, so I'm just wondering, I'm not sure if that came through him or came through his lawyer. So I guess what I'm asking for, if we want to do things correctly, is I'm asking for council to defeat that motion, and if that's agreeable, then I have a second motion or recommendation to bring forward. So can we handle it that way?
Through the mayor, if council does choose to defeat the motion and discuss a new recommendation, anything to do with negotiating or dollar values, we would need to go in closed session to discuss that. There can't be anything discussed in open session related to that. But the motion is on the floor right now, so I believe that there has to be a decision made or deferral.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we've never done well on the fly making decisions. So I would suggest, based on that, there's really no time sensitive to it. Just to defer it and give us time to work on it. And
I'll second the deferral, Mr. Mayor.
I think it's the best bet. And
Done enough stick handling already.
Can I just clarify procedurally? So there was a motion on the floor to adopt the recommendation as it appeared in the minutes. So if the mover and seconder are okay, we're pulling that off now to go forward with this other one. Is that?
That's, who was it, Councilor?
That was Councillor Patterson and Councillor Delamonte.
Yep, it's agreeable.
Okay, so I got same, mover and seconder, that recommendation 15 LSS M0419, additional information related to report LSS 0319, and confidential memorandum LSS M0119 be deferred pending further investigation into the issues noted at the January 21st, 2019 council meeting. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. These cheap things, not working at all. Moved by Councillor Shurton, seconded by Councillor Patterson, that the minutes of the closed session of the January 15th, 19 council committee meeting be adopted, circulated, and remain confidential. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Okay, any comments, questions regarding the council information package? Councillor Shurton?
I think most councilors around this table would agree that we could have some improvements to the voters list. And I've just noticed on page 14 in the council agenda, the town of Kearney Council has a resolution, RE voters list for municipal elections, and they would like some more discussion, and I just think we should support that. And I too think it's, we got to find a better solution of getting the list out, not just strictly leaving it to impact.
Councillor Corbett?
I too agree with Councillor Shurton. It seems to me the last time they're in front of us, they required a handsome increase in the amount of money they were paying because they needed more staff. And we had told them last time that the voters list was bad. I don't know what they're doing, but they can't keep it up front. I know that there are people on that lived in the houses that they lived in for years and never got a voter's card. So I agree with you totally.
Okay. Anything?
So what would you
Yes, so the recommended course of action then would be to bring that item forward at the next CIC meeting as an item on the agenda.
Okay, so.
Yeah, I think that would be great if that we could get that looked at, if not the next CIC, you know, within the next month or two would be great.
Anything else? Councillor Delmay?
Mr. Mayor, just one short comment I wanted to make, and it was in regards to the letter on page 11 that Minister Clark, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, has written to the heads of council about the committee that he's formed to try and see if he can do something about reducing the provincial reporting burden that affects municipalities. The municipal sector as a priority of the government. I'm really pleased to see this, and I hope staff will keep us posted on this, because if there's one thing that we've seen, and Councillor Corbett will attest to this over the years, is, you know, the demand after demand that they put on municipal governments to report information. Some of it relevant, most of it totally irrelevant, and it's bogged down our staff. It's created extra costs for the municipality. But the highlight for me was, I think, 2 conferences ago in the municipal conference, I think it was the AMO conference in Toronto, or possibly the Roma conference, where in the conference room, there must have been 1,500 delegates in that room, and I remember the mayor of Mississauga, Hazel McCallion, standing up and firing back at the minister and saying, we were talking about the report card requirements that the ministry put on us. I remember her standing up and saying, Mr. Minister, you don't need a report card for me. My report card comes every 4 years when I go to the ballot box. That just sticks out of my mind when I read this letter. But anything that they can do to reduce the burden on municipalities and on our staff here at the county would be a positive thing. I look forward to seeing what they come up with. Thank you.
Councillor Corbett?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, members of council. My question comes out of the Provincial Offences Act statistics, and I'm wondering, have we had the opportunity to get any audience with, I don't know, who was it, Ministry of Consumer Services, whoever, to take this type of information and see what's going on and to try to implore to them that we're understaffed. Did we have, were we granted that audience with the minister, do you know?
We've drafted the letter, the mayor's office has drafted it, and we were waiting for this term of council and the new committees to take place, and that was going to be discussion at that time. I don't think that letter's gone out as yet, but we drafted it, getting prepared for that.
Yes, Your Worship, if we do get the opportunity, can we have that statistics and the questions that Karen put forward and responses to be forming and part of the parcel? We give it to them?
Yes, but I think to answer your other question was, did we get a response? Because we did ask for a meeting at next week's Roma, and I will announce it more formally later in announcements, but we did not get a meeting with Correctional Services for next week.
Maybe we spoke too loudly.
Anything else on the information package? Okay.
Reports?
No new business. Reports from council? Nothing. Let's move by. Whew. Is that Patterson again? It's moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Shurton, that bylaws 1 to 8 as listed be hereby introduced, given first and second reading. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. And it's moved by
Lawrence.
Councillor Lawrence, seconded by Councillor Corbett, that bylaws 1 to 8 as listed be hereby introduced and given third and final reading, be signed by the mayor and the clerk, the corporate seal affixed thereto and numbered. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Does that look like a
Signature of a budding professional hockey player.
wow?
The doctor without the burns.
Okay, no, any notices? None? Councillor Patterson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I have a notice of motion. It reads that staff be directed to prepare a brief for consideration during the review of the draft 2019 tax-supported capital budget and construction of wide paved shoulders on Haldimand Road 3 from Haldimand Road 70 to Riverside Drive to provide connectivity for cyclists, and that this work to be completed during the resurfacing of Haldimand Road 3.
Okay. Announcements? Councillor Corbett.
I have two. The first one deals with the Haldimand Norfolk Housing Authority. I've requested that they send the minutes of their meeting to council so we can keep abreast of what's going on. And on Wednesday evening, January 23rd, we'll have an open house at the Lifespan Center. It's unfortunate that it's post the decision of cannabis, but that's the situation as it is. At that, we will discuss what has happened last year and get into a town hall meeting which will speak in terms of community participation or partnership programs and touch on priorities.
Councillor Shurton.
Through the mayor, yeah, also on Wednesday in Dunville at 1 o'clock, and I understand, I believe the mayor and Councilor Corbett and myself will both be in attendance, and maybe other councilors were invited, but it's the grand opening of the new ER in Dunville. That's going to be open to the public. My understanding is the first week of February, but the grand opening with the ribbon cutting and stuff will be on Wednesday at 1 o'clock. So I hope to have lots of people, and hopefully the weather will warm up. And I too will be at the town hall meeting there Wednesday night at the Lifespan Center with Councilor Corbett.
Nothing else? So back to next week's Roma, the response, I think we asked to meet with 6 or 7 ministers, our cabinets. We got a response from Municipal Affairs and Housing, Jim McDonald and Todd Smith, Economic Development and Trade. Those are the, unfortunately, those are the only 2 meetings that we were able to to get. I do believe part of it is due to the timing of the election, the inaugural meeting, and the deadlines for submissions just did not work out. And of course, when we did ask for a request for a meeting, we requested it well beyond past the deadline. So, and, you know, I think this is, I guess, the best of what we could get that was available, and it is a challenge, something that you know, moving forward, I think at the end of the next term, that staff might have to work with you know, with Donna and try to maybe determine, I guess, what would be the topics and take it upon themselves maybe before the election, or this group of councilors would maybe make the recommendations for the new term of council, just to get that transitional period.
Yeah, and I think, Mr. Mayor, if you remember last time, I don't think we had a meeting in the last one.
We
so-
didn't, no, I know.
So we got two, and then I think what we do is we set up and maybe make a special request of the minister's office directly. So it's not in this time period, but we take a trip down to Queen's Park to meet with the minister and set it up. So I'll talk to Don about a specific meeting with corrections on specifically our issues here in Alderman.
Yeah. And to you, Councillor Corbett and Shirton, I have to apologize. I unfortunately cannot be in two places at once, and so I cannot be there Wednesday night. I know you're in good hands, and the CAO, along with both of yourselves, I'm sure will handle yourselves quite well, and I look forward to hearing the feedback on that.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing enclosed. So it's moved by Councillor Corbett, seconded by Councillor Patterson, that the confirming bylaw be hereby introduced, given first and second reading. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. It's moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Shirton, that the confirming bylaw be hereby introduced, given a third and final reading, be signed by the mayor and the clerk, the corporate seal affixed thereto and numbered. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously.
Just a question.
Councillor Shirton?
I don't know if you want to make an announcement with maybe the public watching about our budget meeting on water and wastewater this week. Maybe the time. It's this week, isn't it?
The rate budget will be on this Thursday at 9:30 here in the council chamber.
Okay.
I just know our previous Miss General was always well informed with us to remind the public of those budget meetings that she so dearly loved.
So it's moved by Councillor Metcalf.
Uh-oh.
Seconded by Councillor Corbett, that this meeting now adjourned at 7:34 p.m. All in favor? That's carried unanimously.